Good morning, and welcome to Karma Stories. Wishing you a day full of peace, truth, and just enough karma to keep things interesting. Stay with us for real tales where justice always finds its way. Congresswoman Ellen Hayes, or just Ellen, as she desperately wished the world would see her for these precious few months, unlocked the door to her rented townhome in Willow Creek. The place smelled of fresh paint and the kind of enforced neutrality that developers probably called move-in ready. For Ellen, it was supposed to be a sanctuary, an anonymous beige box where she could shed the skin of Washington, D.C., and try to piece back together the frayed edges of her psyche. 6 months of forced medical leave after the incident, a phrase that still made her stomach clench, was a bitter pill. But her therapist had been firm. Go somewhere quiet, Ellen, somewhere you can just be. Max, her 4-year-old golden retriever, nudged her hand. His intelligent brown eyes fixed on hers. His official blue service vest, emblazoned with PTSD service dog, "Do not pet," was a familiar weight, a comforting presence. He wasn't just a dog, he was her anchor, the calm in her internal storm. Trained by a nonprofit that specialized in veterans and first responders, Max could sense an oncoming panic attack before she even consciously registered the triggers. He was, quite literally, a lifesaver. Willow Creek, with its obsessively manicured lawns and streets named after suspiciously cheerful flora. Primrose Lane, Buttercup Boulevard, seemed like the dictionary definition of quiet. Too quiet, perhaps. The kind of quiet that bred conformity and, as Ellen was about to discover, a peculiar brand of suburban tyranny. The first shot across the bow arrived not via cannon, but via a crisply folded note, printed on offensively cheerful yellow paper, tucked under her doormat. It was addressed to current occupant, Willow Creek Homeowners Association. Official notice. Date, May 5th, 2025. Subject, animal violation. Unapproved pet. Dear resident, it has come to the attention of the Willow Creek HOA board that a large canine has been observed on your property. As per Bylaw 7, Section 3, Paragraph A, all pets must be pre-approved by the Architectural Review Committee and conform to the community's aesthetic standards. Furthermore, animals deemed potentially disruptive or fear-inducing are strictly prohibited. Please submit an application for your animal, or arrange for its immediate removal from the premises within 7 days to avoid further action. Sincerely, Karen Whitaker, President, Willow Creek HOA. Keeping Willow Creek beautiful and harmonious. Ellen read it twice, a muscle twitching in her jaw. Max, who was lying patiently at her feet, thumped his tail once, fear-inducing. "Max," she murmured, scratching behind his ears. "The only thing you induce is an overwhelming desire for cuddles, buddy." She'd specifically chosen a rental that allowed pets, and Max was not a pet. He was medical equipment with a heartbeat, clearly identified as such. She did nothing. Public confrontation was the last thing she needed. This was HOA nonsense, easily rectified by pointing to the Americans with Disabilities Act. The next notice, arriving 3 days later, was less polite. This one was read. Final warning. Immediate removal of non-compliant animal required. Apparently, Karen Whitaker wasn't one for waiting the full 7 days. Then came the emails, CC'd to an alarming number of Willow Creek concerned residents' BCC list. Ellen only knew because one well-meaning, if technologically challenged, neighbor had accidentally hit reply all with a goodness. Karen, is this really necessary? Karen Whitaker's emails were masterpieces of passive-aggressive hostility. Subject, maintaining our tranquil environment. The canine question continues. It has become increasingly clear that some residents believe they are above our mutually agreed-upon community standards. The presence of a large, potentially aggressive animal, regardless of any supposed special status, one is causing significant distress and aesthetic disruption. Willow Creek is a place of peace, not a haven for what some might term privileged beasts, masquerading under dubious protections. Privileged beasts. Ellen read aloud to Max, who merely sighed, as if he'd heard it all before. She's really got a flair for the dramatic, this one. Ellen felt the familiar crawl of anxiety, the precursor to the icy grip of a full-blown panic attack. Max, sensing the shift, nudged her hand more insistently, then rested his heavy head on her lap. his warm breath a calming rhythm. This was precisely why she had Max. And this woman, this self-appointed queen of Willow Creek, was targeting him. A fresh, laminated violation notice appeared taped to her front door. This one, featuring a blurry cell phone picture of Max relieving himself on her own damn lawn, well away from anyone else's precious petunias. Civic nuisance and sanitary code violation. 50 fine payable immediately. Congresswoman Ellen Hayes, the woman who'd faced down hostile committees and filibustering senators, who'd negotiated complex international trade deals, felt a slow burn ignite within her. It wasn't the righteous fury of a politician wronged, but the protective anger of a person whose sanctuary, whose very lifeline, was under attack by a petty tyrant in sensible orthopedic shoes. She still didn't respond publicly. Instead, Ellen Hayes, the trained investigator, the woman who knew how to dig, how to research, and how to build a case, began to observe. She read every line of the Willow Creek covenants, conditions, and restrictions. A document so dense and labyrinthine, it made the federal tax code look like a children's picture book. She noted the frequency of Karen Whitaker's community patrol drives in her immaculate golf cart, the way certain lawns seemed immune to violation notices, while others were ticketed for grass a quarter-inch too high. She saw the whispers, the averted gazes when Karen approached. This wasn't just about Max anymore. This was about an abuse of power, however small the kingdom. And Ellen Hayes, even on medical leave, even while trying to heal, knew a thing or two about fighting bullies. Karen Whitaker had just picked a fight with the wrong privileged beast, and his equally tenacious owner. The quiet observation phase was almost over. The information-gathering phase was in full swing. Ellen's temporary beige box of a townhome transformed into a makeshift C. C, a covert investigations center. Max, sensing the shift in her demeanor from anxious recluse to focused operative, lay watchfully by her desk. A furry, four-legged sergeant-at-arms. The Willow Creek HOA's covenants, conditions and restrictions CC&Rs, all 200 pages of Byzantine legalese, became her primary target. She cross-referenced them with county property records, state business filings, and every publicly available document related to Willow Creek and its esteemed president, Karen Whitaker. Her first breakthrough came from the HOA's own poorly redacted online meeting minutes archive, hidden amongst debates about approved mailbox colors and the scandalous unauthorized planting of non-native petunias, were mentions of aesthetic enforcement actions resulting in hefty fines. Names were blacked out, but property lot numbers weren't. A few hours of cross-referencing with public property databases gave her names. Then, she took Max for walks, long, meandering walks that just happened to pass by the homes of residents who, according to the records, had been on the receiving end of Karen's aesthetic wrath. She didn't approach directly at first, just observed. A garden gnome deemed tacky, resulting in a lien threat. A basketball hoop for a disabled child cited as a visual blight. A family who dared to paint their front door a shade of blue, not on the pre-approved palette. Hounded until they moved. The pattern was clear. Karen Whitaker ruled Willow Creek not with an iron fist, but with a sharply worded violation notice and the implied threat of endless, costly harassment. One afternoon, while Max was patiently sniffing a perfectly manicured rosebush, likely about to be cited for excessive thorn length, an older woman, Mrs. Henderson from down Primrose Lane, approached tentatively. "He's a beautiful dog," she said, her eyes darting around as if expecting Karen to materialize from the shrubbery. "Thank you," Ellen replied. "He's a service animal." "Yes, dear, I know. Read the ADA myself after Karen tried to find my grandson for his therapy rabbit. A rabbit, mind you, said its twitching nose was erratic and unsettling to neighborhood harmony." Mrs. Henderson leaned closer. "She's a terror. That one. Got connections, you know." "Big connections." "Connections," Ellen prompted gently. "Charles Manser, county commissioner. Karen practically ran his last campaign out of the HOA clubhouse. Fundraisers, phone banks, you name it. Now he rubber stamps anything she wants. Building permits, zoning variances for her friends. He even appointed her cousin, a real piece of work named Brenda, to a cushy job down at the county administration office. Brenda makes sure any complaints against the HOA just disappear. Bingo. Ellen felt the familiar click of puzzle pieces falling into place. This was no longer just about a power-tripping HOA president with a vendetta against a golden retriever. This was about systemic, local-level corruption. Back in her seat, Ellen dug into Charles Menser's campaign finance records. Sure enough, Willow Creek Community Enhancement Fund, an HOA-controlled account, had made several suspiciously large donations to Menser's campaign, listed under vague headings like community outreach support and neighborhood improvement initiatives. She then cross-referenced the HOA's publicly available though heavily sanitized budget summaries. The numbers didn't just look off, they screamed creative accounting. Funds allocated for landscaping upgrades that never materialized. Security enhancements that amounted to Karen buying herself a newer, fancier golf cart. And those community outreach funds that flowed directly to Menser. It was a neat little ecosystem of mutual backscratching. Karen delivered a compliant voting block and a slush fund disguised as HOA dues. Menser provided political cover and bureaucratic roadblocks for anyone who dared challenge Karen's reign. His cousin Brenda, the gatekeeper at the county admin office, was the cherry on top, ensuring a black hole for grievances. Ellen leaned back, the sheer audacity of it making her head spin. This wasn't just a rogue HOA, it was a micro-mafia, using the veneer of suburban order to control, to punish, and to enrich. The CC&Rs weren't about maintaining property values. They were about maintaining Karen's power and Menser's political viability. Max was just the latest victim, the latest aesthetic disruption to their tidy little empire of graft. "Well, Max," she said, running a hand over his soft fur. "It looks like we've stumbled into something a bit bigger than a dogfight." Max thumped his tail, his eyes steady on hers, as if to say, "And what are we going to do about it, boss?" The quiet, anonymous sanctuary she'd sought was a mirage, underneath the placid surface of Willow Creek. A current of manipulation and intimidation ran strong. Ellen Hayes hadn't wanted this fight, had come here specifically to avoid such battles. But they had brought the war to her doorstep, threatening the one thing that kept her grounded. Her PTSD still lurked, a shadow in the corner of her mind. But now a different, colder, and far more familiar feeling was taking precedence. The steely resolve of a lawmaker who had sworn an oath to uphold the law, not to stand by while it was so blatantly, arrogantly subverted by a petty tyrant and her cronies. The time for silent observation was drawing to a close. It was a bright Tuesday morning. Ellen was on her small, fenced-in patio, nursing a cup of tea, trying to find a moment of actual peace. Max lay a few feet away on the cool flagstones, basking in a patch of sun, his service vest off for a rare moment of at-home relaxation. He was the picture of canine contentment, tail occasionally thumping a lazy rhythm. The only sounds were the distant drone of a lawnmower and the chirping of sparrows. Willow Creek, for a moment, almost lived up to its tranquil brochure. Then Karen Whitaker appeared at the fence line. She wasn't on her usual golf cart patrol. She was on foot, her face a mask of pinched fury, her eyes glittering with something that looked alarmingly like mania. In her hand, nestled amongst her prize-winning petunias, on her side of the low dividing fence, was not a violation notice or a copy of the CC&Rs. It was a small, snub-nosed revolver. Before Ellen could even process the sight, before she could form a word, Karen raised the gun, aimed it squarely at Max, and fired. The crack of the shot shattered the morning quiet. "I warned you," Karen shrieked, her voice ragged. "I warned you about your vicious beast," Max yelped, a sound of pure pain and surprise that ripped through Ellen like shrapnel. He scrambled to his feet, blood blossoming on his left shoulder, and limped towards Ellen, whining pitifully. Time seemed to warp. Ellen moved without thinking, her body reacting with a speed and clarity that her PTSD had often stolen from her. One moment she was frozen, the next she was scooping up Max, all 70 pounds of him, her mind a roaring whiteout of terror and a cold, diamond-hard rage. "You shot my dog. You crazy bitch." The words were out before she could stop them, devoid of congressional decorum. Pure neunta, unadulterated fury. Karen, for her part, looked almost surprised by her own actions, the gun still smoking in her hand. Then, her face hardened again, the practiced mask of victimhood snapping back into place. Self-defense? That animal was a threat. It lunged. I feared for my life. Ellen wasn't listening. She was already halfway to her car. Max cradled in her arms, his blood warm against her skin. The emergency vet clinic was 15 minutes away. 15 minutes that stretched into an eternity. Max survived. The bullet, thankfully, had passed through the fleshy part of his shoulder, missing major arteries and bone. He'd need stitches, antibiotics, and a lot of gentle care. But he would recover. The emotional scars, for both of them, would take longer. By the time Ellen returned from the vet, Max woozy but stable beside her, Karen Whitaker's counteroffensive was in full swing. A police cruiser was parked in front of Ellen's townhome. An officer, looking deeply uncomfortable, informed her that Miss Whitaker had filed a formal complaint against her for harboring a dangerous animal and had claimed self-defense in the shooting. Then came the inevitable live stream. Karen, teary-eyed and clutching a string of pearls, addressed her Willow Creek friends and neighbors from her perfectly appointed living room. "It is with a heavy heart," she began, her voice trembling with faux emotion, "that I must share the traumatic events of this morning. As you know, I have worked tirelessly to maintain the safety and serenity of our beloved community. Today, I was forced to defend myself from an aggressive, uncontrolled animal that has been terrorizing our neighborhood. An animal whose owner, Mr. Hayes, has repeatedly flouted our community rules and endangered our children." She dabbed at a perfectly dry eye. "My actions were solely to protect the innocent, to uphold the standards we all hold dear. This dangerous creature has no place in Willow Creek." The comment section beneath the live stream was a predictable cesspool of outrage and support, largely divided between those who knew Karen and those who only saw the trembling victim performance. Ellen watched the live stream on her phone, her face impassive, a cold knot tightening in her stomach. The sheer, unmitigated gall of the woman was almost breathtaking. She'd shot a leashed, federally protected service animal in its own fenced yard and was now painting herself as the hero. But Congresswoman Ellen Hayes wasn't a rookie in the political arena, nor was she a stranger to smear campaigns. While Karen was playing to the cheap seats, Ellen was moving with methodical precision. The first call she'd made after ensuring Max was stable was not to the press, nor to her lawyer, though he was on deck. It was to a discreet security firm she'd used in D.C. "I need every frame of CCTV footage from my property, and any adjoining properties that might have captured the incident on Primrose Lane this morning," she'd instructed, her voice calm and level. "And I need it yesterday." She then began compiling her own dossier. The threatening emails from Karen, the collection of illegally issued violation notices, Mrs. Henderson's witness statement, already notarized, the meticulously documented financial records showcasing the misappropriation of HOA funds and the illicit contributions to Commissioner Manser, the timeline of Karen's escalating harassment, every piece of evidence she had gathered over the past few weeks. Karen Whitaker thought she was fighting a quiet, anonymous woman recovering from trauma. She had no idea she had just shot the service dog of a sitting U.S. Congresswoman with a background in oversight and investigations, a woman who now had nothing left to lose and a file thick enough to bury not just an HOA president, but potentially a county commissioner as well. Ellen muted Karen's whining monologue. The public outrage, the social media storm, that was just noise. The real battle wouldn't be fought on Facebook or next door. It would be fought with facts, with evidence, and with the full, unyielding weight of the law. She picked the wrong dog. "Max," Ellen whispered, gently stroking his bandaged shoulder. And she definitely picked the wrong owner. The fight for Willow Creek and for justice had just begun. What did you think of today's story? If it made your day, drop a good in the comments. If it didn't hit the mark, just type 1. Got your own thoughts? I'd love to hear them below. And hey, don't forget to hit subscribe. It's free, and it really helps the channel grow. Thank you so much for being here. A week later, after Max was comfortably recovering, sporting a rather fetching bandana over his bandages, and enjoying a steady diet of contraband bacon, bits, flyers appeared around Willow Creek, not Karen's usual garish yellow or alarming red, but a tasteful cream cardstock. Community dialogue. Addressing resident concerns in Willow Creek. Willow Creek Clubhouse, Thursday, 7 p.m. All residents encouraged to attend. No official HOA seal, just a simple, direct invitation. It was signed, cryptically, a concerned neighbor. Curiosity, and perhaps a desire for more drama, ensured the clubhouse was packed. Karen Whitaker was front and center, naturally, flanked by her usual coterie of HOA board sycophants. She looked smug, probably expecting another forum to decry the dangerous elements i.e., Ellen and Max threatening their suburban utopia. Commissioner Charles Menser, surprisingly, was also present, perhaps to lend moral support or to ensure his puppet didn't go completely off script. He had a practiced, glad-handing smile plastered on his face. The concerned neighbor who took the makeshift podium was Ellen Hayes. She was calm, dressed in a simple but professional pantsuit, her demeanor light years away from the traumatized woman who had first arrived seeking refuge. Max lay quietly at her feet, his presence a silent testament. "Good evening, everyone," Ellen began, her voice clear and carrying easily through the room. "Thank you for coming. My name is Ellen Hayes, and for the past few months, I've been a resident here in Willow Creek, trying to recover quietly from a rather public incident." A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. Karen smirked, likely anticipating Ellen would plead for sympathy. "What many of you don't know," Ellen continued, her gaze sweeping the room, "is that my full-time job, the one I'm currently on medical leave from, is representing the people of the 5th Congressional District of this state in the United States House of Representatives." The silence in the room was instantaneous and absolute. Jaws literally dropped. Karen Whitaker's smirk froze, then melted into a look of stunned disbelief. Commissioner Menser's smile twitched, then vanished entirely. And as a member of Congress, and more importantly, as a citizen who has witnessed certain irregularities, I felt it was my duty to share some findings with you, my neighbors. What followed was not a plea, but a prosecution. Ellen, with the precision of a seasoned litigator, laid out her case. First, the video. On a large projector screen that someone Ellen's quietly efficient security team no doubt had set up, the footage played. Max, peaceful in his own yard. Karen, approaching the fence, raising the gun, the muzzle flash. Max's yelp. Karen's shrieked, "I warned you." Gasps and horrified whispers filled the room. Karen turned a shade of puce usually reserved for overripe plums. "That was doctored." Karen shrieked. Jumping to her feet, he lunged. "It was self-defense." "Please, Mr. Whitaker," Ellen said, her voice like ice. "We also have footage from 2 other angles, plus the testimony of neighbors who witnessed your unprovoked attack on a leashed service animal within its own enclosure. The police have these copies as well." Karen sat down abruptly, her face pale. Next, Ellen displayed copies of Karen's threatening emails, the privileged beast comment highlighted in damning red. She then moved to the HOA financials, spreadsheets showing the siphoning of funds to Commissioner Menser's campaign slush fund, disguised as community development. Menser now looked like he was actively trying to become one with his plastic chair. "These are lies, fabrications," Menser blustered, finding his voice, though it was several octaves higher than usual. "Are they?" "Commissioner," Ellen countered, projecting scanned copies of the checks from the HOA account, signed by Karen Whitaker, made out to friends of Charles Menser. "Because these look remarkably like official bank records and campaign finance disclosures, all publicly available, if one knows where to look." Then, Ellen opened the floor. "I know I'm not the only one who has had difficulties with the current HOA leadership and its interpretation of community standards." It was like a dam bursting. Mrs. Henderson stood up first, her voice trembling but clear, recounting the saga of the therapy rabbit and other fines. Then a young father, his voice tight with anger, described being forced to remove a specially adapted swing set for his disabled daughter because it didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. One after another, residents stood, years of fear and intimidation dissolving in the face of collective courage. Stories poured out. Arbitrary fines for grass length, threats of liens for unapproved mailbox flags, vindictive enforcement targeting anyone who dared question Karen or her board. People spoke of complaints to the county that vanished, of feeling utterly powerless. Karen Whitaker sat in stunned silence, her carefully constructed kingdom of petty tyranny crumbling around her. Menser was frantically texting, presumably to his lawyer, or perhaps his travel agent. As the last resident shared their story, Ellen stepped back to the podium. "Thank you all for your courage," she said, her voice resonating with genuine empathy. "It's clear that what has been happening in Willow Creek is not about community standards or aesthetic harmony. It's about abuse of power, intimidation, and corruption." She paused, letting her words sink in. "This morning, a comprehensive file containing all the evidence presented here tonight, along with sworn affidavits from myself and other residents, was delivered to the U.S. Attorney's Office, the State Attorney General, the House Committee on Oversight and Reform, and several national media outlets. I have also formally requested a federal investigation into the systemic abuse of power within HOA structures across this state, using Willow Creek as a case study." The implication was clear. This wasn't just about Willow Creek anymore. This was about systemic rot. Karen Whitaker made a small, choked sound. Menser was ashen. The reign of the Willow Creek HOA, in its current malevolent form, was over. The fight Ellen Hayes had stumbled into by seeking peace was about to ripple far beyond the manicured lawns of Primrose Lane. She had come to Willow Creek to heal herself. She was leaving having helped heal a community and sparked a much larger, necessary confrontation with the Karenism that festered in the dark corners of suburban America. Max, thumping his tail softly against the floor at her feet, seemed to approve. The days following Ellen's community meeting were a blur of activity in Willow Creek, but it was a new kind of activity. Not the hushed, fearful scurrying of before, but the energized bustle of a liberated populace. Neighbors were actually talking to each other, not in whispered complaints, but in open, animated discussion. The concerned neighbor flyers were replaced by sign-up sheets for ad hoc committees: HOA Dissolution Task Force, New Community Charter Committee, Let's Actually Plant Flowers We Like Committee. The official fallout was swift and immensely satisfying. Karen Whitaker, stripped of her presidential regalia, which, it turned out, she'd had custom-made using HOA funds, found herself facing a raft of charges that made her previous violation notices look like parking tickets: illegal discharge of a firearm within residential limits, cruelty to animals specifically, a federally protected service animal, multiple counts of wire fraud relating to the threatening emails, embezzlement of community funds, and abuse of power under the color of HOA authority. Her claims of aesthetic self-defense and protecting children from privileged beasts were met with stony silence from the district attorney. Commissioner Charles Menser, last seen attempting to achieve invisibility at the clubhouse meeting, was promptly suspended from his duties pending a full investigation by the State Ethics Commission and the Attorney General's office. His cousin Brenda, the infamous gatekeeper of grievances at the county administration office, found her cushy job suddenly under intense scrutiny, with auditors crawling all over her previously unexamined domain. Several other local officials, whose names had surfaced in connection with Menser's network of favors and community development projects, were also experiencing the unpleasant sensation of the legal spotlight. The Willow Creek Homeowners Association, already a toxic brand, didn't stand a chance. Within a month, following a petition signed by an overwhelming majority of residents and armed with the mountain of evidence Ellen had compiled, it was formally and permanently dissolved by court order. In its place, a new, transparent Willow Creek Community Council was established, its members elected directly by the residents in a special election that saw record turnout. The 200-page book of arcane CC&Rs was ceremoniously shredded at the first council meeting, and the shreds used as mulch for a new community garden. But the most symbolic change, the one that truly signified the dawn of a new era in Willow Creek, was Max's Day. Organized by the newly invigorated residents, it was a community-wide celebration held in the Central Park, a park that, under Karen's rule, had a list of prohibited activities longer than a CVS receipt. There were food trucks, a local band, and an astonishing number of dogs of all shapes and sizes, their owners beaming with newfound freedom. The highlight of the day was the unveiling of a life-sized bronze statue of Max. Not Max in his official service vest, but Max as he was that fateful morning, relaxed, happy, a beloved companion. He stood proud, one paw slightly forward, his sculpted eyes looking out with a gentle intelligence. At the base of the statue, a simple plaque was inscribed. Max, loyalty asks no permit. Courage needs no permission. Willow Creek, May 7th, 2025. The date of the fateful town hall meeting. Ellen, who had initially been hesitant about the statue, found herself deeply moved. Max, oblivious to his newfound celebrity status, but enjoying the endless supply of ear scratches from adoring children, sat patiently by her side. He was more than just a dog, he was a catalyst, a furry symbol of resilience against petty tyranny. A few weeks later, Ellen's medical leave was officially over. Her own trauma was still a part of her. But the unexpected battle in Willow Creek had rekindled a fire in her belly, a sense of purpose that had been dulled by her ordeal in D.C. As she packed her car, with Max comfortably settled in the passenger seat, several members of the new community council came to see her off. "We can't thank you enough, Congresswoman," said Mrs. Henderson, now the council's sprightly elected chairperson. "You gave us our neighborhood back. You gave us our voices back. You did that yourselves." Mrs. Henderson, Ellen said, smiling. "I just helped turn on the lights." As she drove away from Willow Creek, she saw children actually playing on their lawns, their laughter echoing freely. She saw a house with a bright purple door and a garden full of gloriously tacky but joyful gnomes. There were no golf carts patrolling, no violation notices fluttering in the breeze. Willow Creek, once a meticulously curated prison of beige conformity and fear, had become something vibrant, something real. It was a testament to the fact that even in the smallest of kingdoms, courage could topple a tyrant, and that sometimes the most profound acts of civic duty begin with standing up for a good dog and the principles he represents. The fight had been unexpected, but the victory, for Ellen, for Max, and for the newly awakened citizens of Willow Creek, was incredibly sweet. And across the state, other HOAs were suddenly, nervously, reviewing their own bylaws, wondering if a concerned neighbor might soon be moving into their neighborhood too. What did you think of today's story? If it made your day, drop a good in the comments. If it didn't hit the mark, just type 1. Got your own thoughts? I'd love to hear them below. And hey, don't forget to hit subscribe. It's free, and it really helps the channel grow. Thank you so much for being here.